Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is November 3rd, and right now we are looking at the infrared satellite imagery, Pacific Northwest to the upper right. There goes our trough across the Gulf of Alaska. As you can imagine, this is going to keep us active as we go through this upcoming week, all the way through the end of the week. We got wind, we got waves, we got big tides, we got multiple rounds of precipitation. So let's dive into that as we go through the video this morning. You can see some precipitation already stretching across the area here today, moving up into western Washington, Western Oregon. Some of this may be virga initially because we still got kind of an offshore flow across Washington. The Vista House there in the Columbia River, Washington border was gusting 57 miles per hour out of the east, but the precipitation will be on the increase today as this system moves in, and that's when the winds are going to pick up for some of the Oregon coast. Now, I want to call attention to these tides yet again, because if you were out on the coast like at the end of October versus what's going on this week, you're up over 3 feet higher. That's a huge amount of water. And you can see the tides are pretty elevated already on the day to day. And Portland National Weather Service is already calling attention to this fact. And for Westport as well, look at October 29th, 7.4, and you're up over 11 feet as we go through Wednesday and Thursday. Friday, Saturday, still elevated. So yeah, this is going to be problematic because with wind and waves, that's going to be an issue. And also, not only that, we have huge amounts of precipitation that could be running off some of the Olympics and the coastal range of Oregon as well. Could be exacerbating some flooding for those local communities. Now, what are the spring tides? They're sometimes called king tides, but the moon and the sun are pulling this tidal bulge in the same direction, and that's what makes for these extreme tides. So hopefully that makes sense. A neap tide is when the moon would be over here, then you got the moon's gravitational pull pulling differently than what the sun is doing, and that makes for less extreme tide activity. So as of this morning, still elevated wave activity for the coastline, kind of out of the west-northwest. And then as we go through this afternoon and evening, a little bit of a bump there with that next system bringing some strong winds tonight. Little bit of a relax here on Tuesday, but it doesn't last long. Look at the bigger waves starting to arrive for the southern Oregon coast as we go through Tuesday night. It's about midnight right there. And as we go through the day Wednesday, look at these waves return all the way up towards Vancouver Island, Washington, Oregon coast. And again, just perfectly lining up with these huge tides. And again, some strong winds and these waves. That is going to make a mess of things potentially for some of the coastal areas. And then we go through Thursday, which an even bigger set of waves moves in. Man, that is not a good look. And I'm probably going to go up there and live stream some of this and document some of this activity here, because that could get kind of wild as we go through Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday on in through this weekend. Now, taking a look, we got a high wind warning all the way up towards Reedsport. It could include some Elaine and all the way towards Lincoln County as well with some of these gusty winds. And we got beach hazard statements for sneaker waves. Of course, you don't need me to tell you that. Hopefully everybody knows not to mess around in the surf zone along our coastal areas. So south winds 35, 45 miles per hour, gust to 60 along capes, headlands, and exposed area. Goes on in through 10 p.m. tonight. So now Portland National Weather Service mentioning that minor tidal overflow flooding. And again, this is going to continue through this week, and it's just going to get exacerbated as these big waves move along the coastline. Seattle doesn't have anything up just yet. We'll see what they do here as we go through the next couple of days. Now, looking at the forecast, 300 millibars. There's Monday's system right here. You can kind of see the kink in the jet stream. But then you'll see Tuesday, Wednesday's system. It is a stronger storm, and it's going to move in towards Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. You can see that moving up across the area, multiple rounds of precipitation, and then another potent system as we go on in through Thursday. Look at that jet stream off our coastline, up over 170 miles per hour at 30,000 feet, just rushing right into the Pacific Northwest. And then we go a little bit further, and kind of a deep trough stays with us, but there is a ridge axis somewhere here near the Pacific Northwest. So still some stuff to look out for as we go through this upcoming weekend. And if we look at 500 millibars, there's Monday's system. There's Tuesday, Wednesday system, and then there's Thursday system. So yeah, 1, 2, 3 punch as we go through this upcoming week. And then who knows what's going to happen after that. Where this trough sets up is going to have some big implications on just what kind of weather we're going to get, depending on where this ridge axis is. Now, looking at the winds right now, I mentioned we'd have some offshore winds across some of the Washington and Oregon Cascades in advance of this next system, and they're fairly breezy through some of the gaps there. Now, we go on in towards this afternoon, and you can see they start to wane by the time we go towards the afternoon hours, but they start to pick up here on the southern Oregon coast. You see that little low-pressure system there, maybe as far north as Lincoln County as we go through tonight. So some pretty blustery conditions along the Oregon coast there. Even getting some blustery conditions across eastern Oregon, maybe into the Willamette Valley, but not nearly as strong as what's on the coast. And then we scroll on in towards Tuesday, and you see the winds pick up again for the southern Oregon coast. Tuesday night, now we're into Wednesday morning. You see some of these strong winds approaching some of the coastal areas. And we go through Thursday, and we bring another potent system on the day Thursday. And look at those winds. You could get some gusts up over 60 miles per hour for some of the coastal areas, up over 50, 55 for some of the northwest interior Strait of Georgia, some of Vancouver Island getting some big winds as well, and gusty across the rest of the area. So taking a look at some of those wind gusts, 10-meter wind gusts. So you can see what's coming today. Again, maybe as far north as Lincoln County there. Some of the higher terrain, the Willamette Valley, maybe a little bit gusty and blustery as we go through the day today. And then Tuesday, Wednesday system rolls through. And you see Seattle maybe getting up towards the upper 30s there, towards 40 for Tacoma as we go on in through the day Wednesday, and some gusts up over 50 for the coastal areas, and some of the higher terrain of Oregon getting pretty gusty. Look at the Willamette Valley actually gusting into the low 40s for some locations, maybe even the upper 40s. And then we go through Thursday, and look at that. You see that for the Washington coast, some gust up over 60 possible. You're talking about Westport, Tokeland, Long Beach out there, and some of the Oregon coast getting pretty darn right blustery on Thursday yet again. Look at the northwest interior as well, 55 plus for some locations all the way up through the Strait of Georgia. So yeah, a lot of stuff coming in here, lots to watch. And as we look at the composite reflectivity as we go through this morning, this would be about 10 a.m. And as we scroll through the day today, this is what the Doppler radar may look like. And we go on in through this afternoon and evening. You see the rounds of precipitation rolling through. And then we bring Tuesday afternoon system in here into Tuesday night, into Wednesday morning. And you notice as this frontal system passes through, we have some instability behind the front, maybe some thunderstorm activity associated with that, and just kind of continued rounds of precipitation as we go through the day on Wednesday. So looking at total precipitation, again, here's today. We start to pile things up. Look at that. Seattle up towards 0.2 of an inch by the time we go towards tonight. Portland more up towards 0.6 of an inch by the time we go towards midnight tonight. And some of the precipitation getting east of the mountains as well. So we'll take whatever we can get over there, no doubt. And then we scroll on in towards Tuesday. You see the next round of rainfall rolling up the Oregon coast there. We go to Wednesday morning. It starts to really pile up along the coastal ranges of Washington, Oregon. I mean, look at some of these totals along the Oregon coast, and you can imagine all that water running off the coastal range with big tides on the day Thursday. Are you kidding me? That's just going to be wild. Big waves, big tides, a lot of water coming down to those streaks and creams and streams and creeks and rivers is going to cause some issues for coastal communities. So you really got to watch out for that. And then as we scroll on in towards this weekend, I mean, look at Seattle up over 2 inches, Portland even more. You're getting rain shadowed east, but you're still picking up some decent amount, especially for the higher terrain. I mean, Spokane, by the time you get towards Friday, you may be approaching an inch of precipitation as well. Now, accumulated positive snow depth change in inches. Something I wanted to point out here as we go through the day today, you can see the European wants to show a little bit of the snowfall accumulating at Stevens, Snoqualmie, White, some of the Cascades here, and maybe in some portions of the higher terrain around Chelan and whatnot. So heads up for that. I don't see any winter weather advisories out, but by the time we get towards tomorrow morning, it wants to put a few inches of snow on the ground. And if nothing else, you might run into some slick conditions out there driving back and forth. So keep that in mind on the day today. You can see this precipitation is starting here pretty quickly, if not already. So we scroll off in towards the later portion of the forecast, and you can see not much more as we go through the 6-day time frame coming up. It's not really a very favorable pattern for big mountain snows, although some of the higher terrain will be picking up some. Now, if we look at the North American model, if we go through the day today, you see it does show a little bit again as we go through this afternoon for Snoqualmie, Stevens Pass, maybe White Pass a little bit, and some of the Cascades picking up a few inches of snow. So don't be caught off guard by that. And just a reminder, all my supporters there on the Patreon and the YouTube page, I see you guys. I can see all your names. I scroll through there just to make sure I know who the sponsors of this channel are. You guys all make this happen. You make these daily briefings possible. And on my, if I click on that, I can see my members on the YouTube side of things here as well. So again, much appreciation. You guys are why this channel is possible day in and day out. Now, the risk of heavy precipitation in the experimental product continues through the mid-month of November. And if we look at the risk of heavy snow also, it kind of starts to show up there. We'll see about that. No promises on that, but it does extend across the Washington, Oregon Cascades and some of the Rockies of Idaho and Montana as well. Now, risk of high winds, they just kind of keep that going out there as well. So they're thinking we're going to remain in this active storm pattern, storm track as we go through the mid portion of November. And if we take a look at the 6 to 10 day, this above normal is just kind of the the southwest flow, just slightly above normal. Not a big deal here, but the above normal precipitation continues November 8th through 12th. And this is something interesting also put on out on Halloween. You got equal chances, but the above normal signal, this is for the second half of November, November 15th through 28th. So yeah, I continue to show an active November, no doubt. And I get a lot of questions about which weather station I recommend. And for the price, this is the one to get. You can spend a lot more on some more expensive stuff, but it's much more difficult to set up. And like I said, it's much more expensive. And sometimes you have to co-locate the anemometer on your roof and things like that if you want the best readings and things of that nature. So yeah, check out the Tempest Weather Station. Click on the link down below to save 10% off. So anyway, hope you guys are having a good day. Otherwise, what else? I may be out live streaming here as we go through this week. Some big waves and some big winds out on the coastline with the big tides may create some interesting scenes. And maybe we'll go to Cape Disappointment or check out some of the communities on the Washington, Oregon coast. And, if you see me out there, come say hi. Otherwise, we'll do this all again tomorrow, and I'll talk to you guys then.